I'm Samantha McLean from Elite Agent Magazine, and in part 2 of our Week 7 Transform coaching, we had property management and business performance coach Fiona Blayney in the house. In our reader survey last year, many of you responded that you wanted to see more of sales and property management working together. And in this video, we have really delivered. Fiona proves that it is possible to break down the silos, get coordinated in your marketing efforts, and create wins for everyone in your agency. We've left this video a bit longer than some of the others, as this presentation from Fiona is absolutely brilliant from end to end and really shows why you can't just look at the people in your area through the one perspective or a single lens. Here are some of the highlights.
Well, welcome, good afternoon everyone. It's great to be here with you, and I feel like I'm flying that property management flag today because I think that the topic that I was given was around the concept of moving, I suppose breaking down the silo between the sales team, which is you guys, and of course that property management team. So what I'm looking at, I suppose, I've said, okay, well, how can we get lead gen through PM? Because it's all about how the Super Six can actually take greater advantage of this property management business. And from my perspective, when I think about sales, the fundamental challenge that I feel most salespeople have is really looking at your business as a long-term process, right? I think, well, you know what, if I was a sales agent in today's market, we're seeing new agencies open up every day, the Super Six and others kind of chomping at your bit, is that ideally we want to look at how do we actually create a sustainable business model for you so that you're here for the long haul and that your activity of today is actually helping you to create more of an automated funnel for 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4, 5, 6. And to me, it's one of those goal setting things. Is it all about planning and how can we plan for more automation in the future? And when we look at that, I go straight to the internals of your business. We can sit here and come up with all the different lead generation ideas around where you can uncover potential vendors under rocks, all over the country, where do they hide every day? But for me, it's all about, well, how can I find them inside your business right now? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through 5, I suppose, areas or tips, insights that I really want you to focus on over the next few months. Straight off is that we've all got this same human that we look at, okay? And I get very technical and very statistics. I love numbers. I think that they tell you a lot about your marketplace, and certainly with property managers and investors. So if I look at this human and they're walking down the street, right? So take yourself to, your particular area. You're in Maroubra now, Jamie, and you're walking down and you see this person walking towards you. Hopefully she doesn't look exactly like this, but she's walking towards you. And atypically, when you're looking at her, and you're looking at her and you're thinking to yourself, vendor, purchaser, right? Because, which genre do they fit in? You typically, from a business context, you're thinking about this person as, are they a vendor or are they a purchaser? Now, throw yourself into the property manager's shoes for a sec, because part of the concept of lead gen through PM is being able to see the human as the property manager sees them, right? Because once we can start to really assimilate with them, and that whole law of reciprocation is going to start working a little bit more effectively if we can understand them. And so this person actually fits into the 4 categories, right? So the 4 dimensions of a client for a real estate agency. So of course for you, as I said, vendor, purchaser, but when a property manager or property management professional sees that exactly same person walking down the street, they're thinking landlord, tenant. But realistically in your marketplace, the wonderment that is real estate is that every single person that you see actually fits into at least one of these categories, right? One of these categories. So, you think about your particular area, every single person that you meet every day is either financing the real estate industry through property management, be that as a landlord or a tenant, or they're financing the industry through sales, be that as a vendor or a purchaser. So everybody actually has a price tag. And I think the first thing that we can see is if we can break down the silo, and this, I'm getting you guys to kind of, beat the path for every agency, from my mantle, is if we can break that silo, and instead of seeing them as a client of property management or a client of the sales team, if we can actually see them as a client of the real estate industry and we start seeing them technically with this price tag, we're going to start looking at that person and say, okay, how can I serve, which I know is something that you've all been looking at over the last couple of weeks, but not only how can I serve that client in that 4 dimensions, but what is the value of that human walking down the street to our industry, and how do I tap into that fee? And if we think about how I can tap into that fee, that price tag attached to that person, being that you're all in this for the long haul, then you're going to be starting to set yourself up for your budget for not just 12 months, 2, 3, 4, 5 years as I was talking, and 7 years when you look at the average life cycle of a vendor perhaps in your marketplace. So first thing, break down the silo. Second thing, we need to look at the price tag associated with the human, 4 dimensions. And now how can you, because to get the property managers on board, you're going to have to take the first step. It's like that loggerheads that you're going with the PM team. You're going to need to give to them first in order to get something back, right? And so the first thing that I'm going to show you is around really completely understanding your specific market now, just relevant to investors, okay? So homework, and some of this stuff might be new, some of it might be things that you've been told before, but you haven't necessarily looked at it from this vantage point. Firstly, you've got to know exactly how many numbers, how many doors are in your marketplace in any given time. Now, you've heard that one before, right? Know your market, understand your stats. The second thing though that I want you to know, which is taking that a little bit deeper, is not just how many doors do we have in Taree as an example, but how many doors do we then have? What is the breakdown between being an investor door and being a owner-occupier door? Now there'll also be a little bit of an anomaly there, which is quite an interesting anomaly, which is an investment door or a renter's door that's owned as part of the public sector, what we call public housing. And there's a percentage of public housing pretty much in every location, at some level. When we look at that, you'll then not just know what your market looks like, you'll actually start to segment your marketplace. Because the way that you tap into your owner-occupier market, and I know you've talked about even just door knocking when you were speaking with Claudio earlier, but also if you're attacking then an investor market, we've got to go at that a very different way, simply because the investor's not at home in the location behind the door of that which is in the market that you are atypically, albeit we know, and this is where your property management friends can start to help you, you can actually start to drill down, even with your own rent rolls, in identifying where do those owners actually live. So if I own an investment property in Balmain, do I live in Balmain? Do I live in the Leichhardt municipality, or do I live somewhere else? Am I onshore? Am I offshore? Now there's this wonderful thing called a database in your office, and there's an even, hopefully, what typically is a better version of it is your property management, the trust accounting system, the database carrying all the data of all of the clients. That's going to very simply spit out for you a list of every single landlord that is in that database, and you can even sort them by postcode, by state, by suburb, right, by territory. So you'll end up being able to see, well, not only how many properties do we have, are they owner-occupied, are they investors, and then just using your own business as a snapshot, where do those people live? Now, of course, you can look at RP data and gain some absentee owner information and start culling that. But if you're going to find out how can I talk to these investors, both through the property management division and otherwise, we need to know where they are and start to build a little bit of an idea or identity of those investor clients. So when we look at that, hopefully you'll recognise this image here, Ben. Yep. And if you don't, we've got some problems to start with. But this is actually, as I mentioned before, I'm using Ben's location simply because it was one that I knew myself. So when we look at this, this is Ben's area. And what we want to know is statistically, what does, and I've used the Leichhardt municipality just for generalisation as opposed to drilling down, say, into the Balmain Peninsula there, Ben. But in that location, and this is just taken from census data. Now, of course, from using RP data, CoreLogic, you can go down and drill down a lot deeper than this. But for today, you've got 22,639 houses, doors in your location. Now, interestingly enough, comparatively to the general Sydney market, you're sitting at 38% of those properties are private investors. Right? Now, general Sydney market is probably about 25%. So it's, on average, it's a lot higher than what you would imagine. And so sometimes I think that we feel like we know our marketplace just based on our own kind of vibe each day, but our vibe is not necessarily a true reflection of what's happening. And be that as we're all obviously here to grow our businesses, we've got to know what the wider market looks like as opposed to what our existing micro market is right now. Otherwise we keep trying to harvest the same stuff, right? So if we look at that, and I've just estimated that the value across the municipality from looking at a few different numbers, probably sitting at about $1 million when you take into account the wider market, apartments and houses, right? Now, if we look at 2% maybe is your average, I don't know, Ben, you're up higher than that maybe in terms of your 2% is good, yeah, average com. So for every home obviously that transacts, we know that there's a $20,000 commission up for grabs, right? So we're looking at it that way, and with an average rent of $600 a week. So they're just like a quick snapshot on the market. And I'd really encourage you, and I can give you a spreadsheet where you can throw your own data in and it'll help you spit out some of the stats that I'm showing you today. I'm happy to share that with you. So what we've done is that's your market. Now then we need to look at, okay, well, how do we drill down further into the investor stats and what does that market actually mean as an investor to me as a sales agent and this automatic funnel? So with 5% typically, what I find with the agencies that we work with around the country, 5% they'll say atypically is sold from their rent roll each year. Now, we have markets, of course, that will have a higher trend than that depending on what's going on in any one time. But of that, if there's a really strong relationship between the sales division and the property management division, and we've got a well-functioning or adequate even to some extent property management business, you'll tend to find that 80% of those investors will sell with the agent that they're already with, right? So that means that if you've got this wonderful database of 10,000 contacts out in your marketplace and 38% of them are actually investors, of that 3,800, if they own an investment property right now, when it comes time to sell, 80% of the time, they're going to sell with the agent that's already managing that property, right? So Murphy's Law now starts to kind of tell you, well, hang on a second, let's put 2 and 2 makes 4. We need to get those 3,800 into our world because otherwise we've only got a 20% chance of securing that listing. And in addition to that 20%, we're fighting with every other agent in the marketplace to get to that 20%. Does that make sense to everyone? So now if I've just worked on the basis here that the average property kind of turns over every 7 to 10 years, just on average, obviously some of them shorter, some of them longer. And depending on your various areas and what the, I suppose the culture is around holding investment properties in your location, that may waver. So you need to take that into account. But if we go back to Ben and our example there, that would mean that of the 7,652 properties sitting in the Leichhardt municipality right now, if 5% of those sell this year, there's a volume of 383 properties, okay? $1 million, 20 com, that's 7.65 odd million worth of sales commission that is being generated in that location, in that market this year. So now the question starts to become, how do I get that? What do I need to do? What do I need to make it easier to get that? Remembering that 80% of that volume is going to the agency that's already managing it, okay? So this property management division now becomes so much more to you than simply an ability to serve people that you know. It starts to become the ability to automatically funnel through to you the people that you meet that are investors to get them into that part of the business, because we want them 80% of the time coming to us. All right, so I'm going to call this the club, right? Property management for you guys now is no longer allowed to be called property management. I want you to call it the club, because this is like the club, yeah? Like we're getting all these investors into your club. Now, I think the easiest analogy I can give you is this thing, right? Very simply, this is my club. Now, obviously training and coaching and consulting, I'm flying all the time. Now, I'm sure there's a few people that have got a couple of colours up from me on this, but it's not for me, it's not about the colour, it's about the metaphor that this club card brings me. Because when I'm in the club, so when I'm in the Virgin Club, I don't fly Qantas. I freak out if somebody books me on a Qantas flight. Like I have a joke with some of my clients, oh, you want me to fly Qantas? Better be business class because I'm not in the club, right? Now, the metaphor behind it is that you want everybody you know, everybody that you come in contact with to be sitting inside the club. Because you want them in the Virgin Lounge, you want them in the McGrath Balmain Lounge, right? You want them in the LJ Hukatari Lounge. Like you want them in your lounge because you want them only flying you when it comes time to sell. Now, there are so many opportunities every day, every week, every month, every minute almost, and I'm probably going to enter you into a bit of a minefield now about how you can get people into your club, and it's going to be up to you to pick and mix how deep you want to go with this, and obviously the risk return and what the longevity is that you want to put in place and what you want to invest in it in terms of immediate reward and long-term reward, okay? But ultimately, the more people in the club, the more opportunities you're going to have, obviously, as time goes on. So what does that look like? Right now in Leichhardt, there's 7,656 people that want to be a club member somewhere. Because these are the private landlords. These are guys in the private market. These are the ones that have their properties managed. You've only got access to 20% of that if they're not in your club. So what can we do to get more people in your club? I want you to help build the club. When you think about referring properties into property management, most of the time we think about that from the perspective, I keep waving my club card around, right? It's like, hey, a little bit of an advert for Virgin there. But we think constantly about when we're building the rent roll or we're referring people in, we see it for their benefit. Right? We said, oh, we're going to put another management on, or we'll think about referring somebody across, because we're just thinking about it in the context of what does it mean today, right? But in order for you to have this automation, you've got to think about every single one of those as being an opportunity for the future, because that's where you get this automatic lead gen coming from, right? So if you want to think about, instead of thinking about it as the club, you could think about it as being the client bank, right? And this is the bank account that over time, you're going to go in and take a withdrawal out of. So what do we do for that? When we look at the client bank, when you're taking somebody out of the bank, we know that, and we were talking earlier, Melinda, about, getting a lead from property management, and, sometimes we have fights with the property managers and like, oh, my landlord, you're not taking them, don't sell it, I'm renting it. And so it's also a culture internally that we need to change, which is around, we've got these clients there, and ultimately at some point in the next, depending on when they bought the property, it might be in the next 1 year or it could be 7 years from now, they're going to sell, right? Or maybe we're going to help them leverage in to buy something else so we can throw another property back into the bank. But ultimately they'll at some point be a vendor or a purchaser. Now, depending on which way they go with that, they'll then move forward from then, okay, well, I've become, let's say they were a purchaser, they've purchased another investment property. So now at that point, maybe down the track, they'll become a vendor or a purchaser of that property. And the list we could sit here and, go on and on and on and on about all the different kind of choose your own adventure elements in terms of creating the bigger property. But what I want to talk primarily to you about is, that's what I call a company client. Right? That's just going to happen. This is like when you sell a property and you sell it to an investor. To me, it should be a tick on a sales advice that says, are they investor? Yes. It's like standing at the McDonald's counter. Do you want fries with your Big Mac? Well, yes, because I'm not going to walk across to KFC to buy a packet of fries. So what I want to look to you at is, how do I actually get more people in the client bank before they've transacted, right? This is like the non-company clients. And here is where you guys win hands down across your property management business every day of the week, because you simply come in contact with way more people who are potential investors, or the likelihood that they are investors is just off the scale comparatively to the property management team, say for example in a leasing philosophy. So you look at that inquiry piece. Think about now how many inquiries you get every day from all of the varying angles that you get them. Right? So you think about it from an online inquiry from one of the real estate portals, from your own website, let alone somebody that goes to an open home, they email you directly, they call you, like the list just goes on. My question to you is, what are you doing with that data to get them into the club? Because even though I inquire on 25 Smith Street, I might be inquiring that as an owner-occupier, and I might tell you that I'm actually renting a property at the moment. But I don't tell you that I own 3 other investment properties in your marketplace. You want those in your club. Does that make sense? Yeah. Right? And so taking those inquiries and say, okay, well, are they a purchase with me or they're a non-purchaser? If they're a non-purchaser, then they start getting thrown into the client bank. Now, using your databases, your CRM, you can actually start to automate a lot of this process. It does take time because, of course, you've got to cull people and look at how can I keep in contact with them. And I'm sure if you rang every single person that you got as an inquiry across the week, you might need another 2 people in your business, right? I'm not, depending on how your stats are and your data. But every one of those people is an opportunity. Now, I can tell you myself as an investor, as a homeowner, I could count on one hand the number of times we get a call back about anything. We own investment properties in locations. My husband will inquire as a potential purchaser on another property in that location, nada back. And so we actually, as far as that goes, I can understand why that 80% of people go to their existing client base, because there's not the relationship there, right? So it's data, relationship, result. They're really the 3 things, I believe has been the core basic success of a real estate professional, business owner or agent, irrelevant of where you are. So now if I look at that in terms of the 100 that you might pop through, let's say you refer over the course of 2 years, 3 years. Let's say you refer in. Now, remember, this is not converting deals. This is just referring them into somewhere else. A lot of your businesses now might have a new business manager in property management or someone that's taking care of the actual conversion strategy. But when just looking at 100, if 5 of those sell in a year, that's $80,000 worth of available commission. Okay? Now, I don't know about you, but if I walked past $80,000 in the street, I'd probably pick it up. So how can we get that? How can you automate that process and make that easier for yourselves in which to do that? Now, as I mentioned to you, I've got some, which I'll just try and pop into here, where you can even put your own data into that shows you how to, let's make this a bit wider. Now this I've just populated with Ben's information, right? So how many dwellings, percentages, rental number of properties, average rent, etc. And I can even drill down here into what the available rental market income is, 20 million. I can work down into the sales income, and I can even show you what the average value of a human is to the real estate industry as a head count as they walk down the street. So now every time you speak to somebody, that human is worth $1,200 in the municipality of Leichhardt. So then you need to work the club. So it's easy, I'm saying to you, let's just get as many people into that funnel as we possibly can. You're at an open for inspection, maybe you're asking that, or when you're looking at your scripts and dialogues, maybe it's a different script that you're using just to develop some rapport with the client. So instead of saying, as you've been doing scripts and dialogue, I know with Claudio, but when you're looking at it and you're trying to find out how their week was, have they sold something, what their situation is, so tell me about how your investment's performing for you at the moment. So, how are you feeling in terms of cash flow with the investment market? Australians, they take that as a massive compliment. If you've assumed that they own an investment property, They're kind of like, oh, you thought I owned one. Oh, that's kind of cool. And as a result, you start to, that's a different rapport building, but you've just identified, can you get them in the club, right? So I want you then to look at, well, who are your existing club members? So start to understand now, if we bring that back to what we have today, because you want some quick results as well, I'm quite sure. So, it's about understanding your club, understanding the investors that your property management team are already working with. And remembering that the property managers are different beasts to you, right? Completely. And I don't use that beast word in the wrong way, but they certainly, they're very ownership based around their clients. They're very protective of their clients. You'll hear them talk about things like, that's my landlord, you're not taking my property, you're not calling my client. They say my, rather than the business, right? And so part of it is then also understanding how the property manager's mindset works. They're very detail orientated, and you guys tend to be very big picture. It's kind of like old hunter-gatherer, right? You're the hunters, they're the gatherers. They're down collecting the berries, making sure we've got the right amount for dinner. You're off out killing the wildebeest. So that's literally, as crazy as that sounds, that's the diversity of how your brains work. If I put you in their chair for a week, we'd probably lose the entire rent roll. If I put them in your chair for a week, we probably wouldn't do a deal and we'd be doing everything for free. It's just based on how everybody's minds work. So there's some sales style support services that you can give them. It's about building rapport with them, because law of reciprocation, like I said earlier, you give something to them, you're going to get more back from them. So what is it that you could do for the property management team? Most property managers, and they'll kill me for saying this, but the reality is most of them don't understand investing. One of the best received training sessions we actually do is walking in the shoes of the investor, where we take people through the process of what it costs to save enough money to buy an investment property to start with, and then what it costs to maintain it, because the average property manager doesn't own an investment property themselves. So really helping them understand your market and doing it from the expert piece in your organisation. Again, you'll get a win with them in terms of how you're trying to show them some support. Additionally, they're not ringing the bell for a sales deal. They're ringing their own bell at their desk quietly on their own. Perhaps the bell doesn't even go off out loud, about the tenant that's finally paid their arrears, or that condition report issue that got solved, right? So it's about, and that really, they're so pleased with themselves for that, as they should be, because it's quite a difficult task. You'd never want to do it, and I don't blame you, but the way that it would look is that if you actually took an interest in what they were doing as well, they're going to take more of an interest in you. And I suppose it's like that husband-wife partner analogy, looking at it that way. The second thing is that if you want to start offering then some stuff back into the clients themselves, most clients have not had an appraisal of their property since the day they bought it, right? They're looking at the newspaper, they're looking online, they're going onto the various portals to try and get some understanding of what their property is worth. Imagine if you set up a process within your organisation whereby you simply touched base with the clients and doing what I call a desktop appraisal, meaning that you don't necessarily have to go out and see the property. With the wonderment that is the net now, you can see all the photos, they're there. You can, most of the time, you've got a floor plan, you can walk through, and it's just a courtesy call conversation, letting them know where their property's at. And hey, you might even start chatting with them about the opportunity for equity, if you've got referral partners in, and maybe you're now selling them an investment property in your area, doing a sale, throwing somebody else into the club, right? Market updates, so looking at that data, and I know you're working around your data communication as part of this program, but really making sure that there's strong, specific micro market communication going just to the landlords, right? So I know businesses that do this terribly. There's 5 or 6 communication pieces that are pretty much the same thing, going to the same data, because they're operating those data across multiple channels in their office. So you might have your own little database, sales team's got a database, the whole company's got a database, property management's got their database, and then there's a prospective client database for property management, and the poor client gets the same newsletter 5 times, 6 times, and I've seen that happen. And of course, that's just dire consequences for any club there. ideally what you'd do is you'd take like that particular piece of communication, you'd merge it into one. So that it may be an amalgamation of the data that's going out to the general database that particular month, and then perhaps it's with an investor overlay, but it's in the same mail piece. The challenge that we've got now with data and mail communication is we are getting flooded with it. You know, over a weekend, there's nothing for me in 24 hours to get 150 communication pieces, right? I sit there with my phone and I do this. I love the edit button. Edit, delete, 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 delete. I don't even open it, right? Because there's too much. And so it has to be really great value add. Everybody's calling their market piece to their landlords, or the newsletter. I despise that term. But they'll call it my market update. Well, what if I'm getting a market update from 5 other people? You know, so it's also about differentiating yourself even to your own landlord base, which is where I suggest that you're getting quite personal. And personalised marketing is going to be, or personalised communication is going to be a very big part of where we move to, I think, in the marketing piece. And you want to position yourselves as being the experts for those clients, you know, and even being the expert for them in terms of what is going to work best for them, getting really micro on it if possible. Yeah. So challenging, I know. Providing them with the opportunities to buy. So in many cases, you'll have investment style properties that are available right now, you know, and perhaps doing a specific e-blast to clients that you've identified as having equity available for them, and then tailoring that mail piece that actually talks all about the investment benefits as opposed to just the normal blurb and you're just ripping it out of your existing mail database and just sending it out as it is. So talking about why that particular property would be great for an investment or the investment features, as opposed to just here's a property. And of course, working the club is not just about landlords, it's about tenants. So right now in my marketplace, I'm not only a homeowner, I'm also a tenant, literally within 100 metres of each other. And I can tell you as a tenant, I had the most diabolical experience known to mankind. I had not one return phone call. I had not one response to email. The process being is that the opportunity is there, but we've got to recognise where it's coming from and understand the numbers so that you're accurately communicating with the right place to generate these leads and get them automated. The law of reciprocation, we've talked about that a lot. I've talked about being interested in the team. Property management's going to love your clients. They're not going to give them the exact same service as you do. Okay, we're going to put that out on the table right now. And I'll tell you why. Because they've got 200 of them. They've got 200 of them that they're servicing every day. Right? When you look at how many listings you've got right now, comparatively to how many clients they're going to have to deal with today who have actual challenges today, they're vastly different. And so just from a supply demand of time perspective, we're thrown out there. So be aware that there will be a slight shift, right? So you need to support them through that. Improve your knowledge in the investment market. Improve your knowledge around what it is to own an investment property, what you need to be aware of, legislation. Now, I don't expect you to become a property manager by any stretch of the imagination, but from a lead gen point of view, understanding that investor market is going to also give you some additional dialogue that you can have with all of your inquiries that are coming through around investing. So things like smoke alarm legislation, pool legislation is going to be a big one for you in Queensland. Looking at the whole risk safety, blind cord safety, depreciation, really understanding how all of that works just allows you to then just take yourself up a notch in terms of the investor's eyes. So being able to have more meaningful conversations, and then additionally, meaning that the property managers feel like you're more part of their team than what you're probably sitting at right now. And then creating some joint initiatives with the property management teams. You know, what are things that you're sitting down with them, having an idea session around, look, how can we help you generate more leads? How can you help us generate more leads? You know, how can we grow this business together? Having some joint initiatives across the business for the entire organisation that everybody knows about. You know, most businesses, which I kind of laugh, the property management team have no idea what the goals of the sales team are for that year. And the sales team have no idea what the goals of the property management team are. And there's no joint initiative to make that happen when we're all out talking to that same human worth $1,267 walking down this street every day. So, hopefully you've gained some ideas here around lead gen through the PM. I could literally work with you on this all day. We could get into the nitty-gritties of your business. It's about understanding the business as a whole, and when you're seeing that human walking down the street, see that nice little price tag associated with them so that we can get them in your club. So I hope that's helped, and I wish you all the very best in building your club. I like automated funnels. 7 years from now, if you've topped in 50 properties a year, and it's one person finding one investor that you can get to join your team each week out of the number of people that you deal with, 7 years from now, that's 350 people in your club, properties in your club. A few of them are going to divorce, so you'll get a couple of extras, right? Some of them are going to sell along the way, but remember, every single one of those people that you throw across is a potential 20 grand sale, with 5% of them converting every year. So good luck with that.
So great stuff in there from Fiona to think about, and maybe next on your to-do list should be asking for a meeting with your PM team to see how you can help and to look at how you can get coordinated in your marketing efforts throughout the office. Once again, coaching links are below, and to contact Fiona, visit realplus.com.au/contact us, particularly if you would like to talk to her about any of the things she mentioned in her presentation. Next week, we're super excited to have ARIC 16 speaker and Elite Agent regular contributor, Super Coach Josh Fegan, to talk to the Super Six about their productivity and milestones for growth. Don't forget to catch our Super Six to see what they're up to with their video diaries on our website. And remember, if you have any questions for our coaches or our Super Six, tweet us at Elite Agent Mag #transform. See you soon.